Kia ora and welcome to the Quality Antics Podcast. Dom, we're here at Indigo Provisions in the heart of Christchurch. This is your store. This is the baby. But before we get into this, tell us a little bit about yourself. How are you, mate?
Oh, good, thanks. Kia ora, kia ora. Thanks for having me along, man. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and be part of your podcast.
Nice. Good to have you, mate. You've been tuning in, and you've been giving me some feedback on the potty, and I was like, God, it'd be good to have you on. So we've just rigged it up a bit of a setup here, and we're into it. So talk to me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do?
Where am I from is an interesting question in and of itself. Honorary Kiwi, but not born and raised. Mm-hmm. I was born in Paris, actually.
Ooh, wee wee.
Fancy. And my parents are both English. So, yeah, born in Paris, and then was only there for like a few years. And then moved back to the UK. Lived there for a wee while. Then moved to Dubai 3 years.
Wow, cool.
Just crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
What was that
experience.
like? How old were you when you were there?
Like, I think like 6, 7, 8 years old.
So you were like
chilling. I was a youngin'. So don't really have like too many memories of it, but I know it was like just crazy. Just like this real commercial, everything's super polished and new buildings and flash cars and
it looks epic over there.
Yeah. It's very kind of it's very sort of built up and all about business and shopping malls and crazy stuff like that. But so
actually bring your mic just that way towards you as you're talking. Beautiful.
A
bit of podcast, figuring out the logistics here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you Dubai for a few years, then where?
Back to the UK for a year, and then to New Zealand. 1st of January 2003 we arrived.
Oh, nice.
So
how old were you then?
Like 12.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so from then on, you've been in New Zealand the whole time, or have you popped back? And what?
I did a stint in London 2 years, 2016 to 2018. Yeah.
Ah,
so
interesting.
Yeah. And then after that, moved to Christchurch because it was Auckland. When we moved to New Zealand, it was Auckland.
Okay, cool. So you chilled in Auckland for all those years, developed, grew up, then cruised to London, and like, could you remember things from when you were real young, or was it like this new world?
It was pretty new. Like, I actually went back when I was 20 years old, for like 3 or 4 weeks, and I stayed with my mum and dad's like close friends, and I worked for him in his like office, just doing like admin stuff, just to like, I don't know, like just to get experience and see what it was like. And I actually didn't really enjoy it. It was too full on, because London's intense, man. It's crazy. So
so you didn't like it, but then
I didn't like it at that time, but when I went back to live,
you were ready for that sort of stuff.
I was a bit older. I went with my partner, and I got a job that I actually cared about. It was a little bit older, a little bit more streetwise, or just kind of you could appreciate it more for what it was.
Cool. So then, obviously, growing up in a bunch of different places, what do you think that has affected the way you see the world now, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think so. Like, it's definitely given me an appreciation for different cultures, and different worldviews and perspectives, and you know, I can appreciate the laid back, you know, chill lifestyle of New Zealand and the nature, and then I can also appreciate like the city, the busyness, the kind of the thrill of like a real city, a real bustling kind of place like London, and then also kind of the sort of luxury, for lack of a better word, of Dubai, where it's all like crazy hotels and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's given me a lot of kind of different experiences of different people and different kind of environments. Yeah.
So how old were you when we'll fast forward a lot of your life here, but how old were you when you were in London for the 2 year stint?
I was 23.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
23.
nearing
24.
your mid-20s, and
Yeah.
the big wide world. What were you doing for work, and what were you doing for fun, and like what was it like?
It was a roller coaster. It was like quite an adjustment, even coming from Auckland, which is like a busier city.
Yeah, compared to yeah.
It's like you get off the train, like there's tube, like the subway, and you at Oxford Street, Regent Street, and just teams of people, masses of people. It's a bit of a shock. Like even though I'd lived in Dubai and things like that, like I'd spent a decent amount of like 10 plus years in Auckland, having not really left Auckland, like except to Australia or whatever. Yeah. So it was an adjustment, and it's busy. It's a fast paced, lifestyle, and there's, you could, when we first got there, people were like, if you can get a job where the commute is like under an hour or an hour and a half, you're doing good. Like eat one way, like, and things like that.
Crazy.
And it was kind of like throwing in the deep end. Like we stayed with my parents because they live there. They moved back like a couple of years before we went over. Yeah. So we stayed with them for a while to like get on our feet and find a flat and things like that. So that was really cool. What did I do for a job? I went, handed out my CV in a bunch of places, got a bunch of interviews and stuff. And I ended up, my first job I was working at the Levi's concession in Selfridges. Okay. Which is a massive department store. It's like huge. It's one of the oldest department stores in the UK. Yeah. And it's like 6 levels, and it's like everything from like cosmetics to. Is it
like Harrods but different?
But yeah. Same, but like more trendy, less like Harrods is. I mean, they've both got a lot of heritage, but I think Harrods is more kind of, I don't know, less contemporary perhaps, like in terms of like so Selfridges, everything from like crazy stationery and perfumes. They had a little Apple store on one of the levels.
But you were based in the Levi's
so
area.
I was in the Levi's kiosk, which was like a little tiny space. There was only like 2 of us working there.
Is that where the obsession with denim began? Or was it like, going through high school and living your time in Auckland, we're rewinding here, was fashion important to you, or was what you wore important, so it's always been like my passion. Like when I was in high school, like around 15, I wasn't really enjoying school. I wasn't really connecting with it, and there was a new mall that had opened up, Westfield opened up, just like down the road from school. And so I was like, I can get it like a job, after school and on the weekend or whatever. And so, I went there with my CV, and I got a job at Amazon. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I was the youngest team member, 15.
I can imagine you working at Amazon.
Okay. A lot of people cut their teeth in New Zealand retail-wise in Amazon. It's like a really good starting point. So that's where it kind of like fashion and that surf skate streetwear kind of thing started for me, and I just loved it, and I found that I was really good at it. Cool. And I wasn't enjoying school, so it kind of like all.
So did you transition out of school and say, hey, I'm out?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I just didn't have really an interest in school, and I really enjoyed working there, and the culture of the place, and like there was just like a bunch of people that were into the stuff that I was into, like music wise and like creativity wise, and I found that I didn't really have people that I related to at school, and so it was like, man, I'm out of this place. So I dropped out like end of year 12. Just
Okay.
like, so I'm done.
Yeah.
Didn't do very well, but that's okay. And then, I went
Full-time into... Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I've worked retail ever since. Yeah.
So then you were enjoying your experience at Amazon. You're dipping your feet in the waters, and you're like, oh, this like the brands and the seasonal wear that was coming through, and learning and looking and enjoying all that sort of stuff. And then we're like, hey, I want bigger and better. Why the jump to London? Why would you go all the way over there? You've got your sweet job at Amazon. Like,
I actually left Amazon. There was like a series of different jobs after that. So I worked there for a good while, like maybe 4 years, 4 or 5 years or something. And then I did a stint at UB, when they had the stores.
Yeah.
So I was like, at the time, like the iPhone just was coming to New Zealand, and like I was like, it's, like that whole thing was taken off, and I was super interested in it, and like the whole technology thing and the design ethos of like Apple, and all those awesome videos of Johnny Ive like talking about it, and his cool. So started working there, did a couple of years there. Progressed a little bit in terms of learning some stuff about management and managing people, and not just the sales floor. And then after a while, kind of got bored of that, and there didn't seem much room to grow within the company. Plus, they were kind of like having a few troubles and stuff. And then I went, and then Platypus was coming to New Zealand.
Ooh, okay.
Like opening up. So jumped on board with them, which was awesome because I always loved Vans, and especially Vans shoes. And so, the opportunity to step into like an assistant manager role there came up. So slowly kind of working my way up.
Nice.
And got to go to Melbourne for training, and like that was really cool. And that was again like just always learning stuff, and like they had a lot of good, because it's a big company, they had a lot of good structures and systems and like processes. So it was cool to just like soak that up. And the culture, like company culture, is something that really interests me as well. Cool. Like over the years I've just like developed more and more interest in it, and like how a big company especially, and this kind of transferred over to Levi's when I was there, is like how do they operate from like a culture perspective? How do they manage to find people that are quite sort of like-minded and kind of things like that? So
cool. You take that for granted though, but there's
it's so huge. Okay. And I think a lot of people potentially take it for granted, but it's so important, and it's really interesting because a good company culture can actually make or break your business.
Totally.
So it's like that became really interesting to me.
Cool.
And actually over time I started to not really gel with the culture there.
Okay.
And that led me to kind of move on from that. And I did like a pop-up shop for myself.
Yep. Cool.
In Takapuna on the North Shore.
Well,
there's a lot to go through here.
But what makes you... Okay, so you've jumped ship. What makes you decide to do the pop-up shop? Are you like, hey, there's some products that I... Like what was running through your head at the time?
So back when I was working at Amazon, like a couple of us there, although it was mainly me, like started a little brand.
Cool.
And we were screen printing t-shirts, and we were going to local gigs and selling t-shirts and like giving product to our friends that were in bands and things like that. And so that's what kind of sparked the idea for this pop-up shop, because I'd been doing this clothing line sort of in the background, just real casually.
Cool.
Getting t-shirts printed up, and a few other bits and pieces. And then I was like, surely I can't be the only one who's got this like a little brand or something that's really cool that like doesn't really have much of an outlet. I didn't really know much about wholesale at that time. So I, made a couple of friends who had little stores or little kiosks. Like I had a friend who had a little sort of shop on K Road, and she put the put some t-shirts in there to sell for me,
Yeah.
like on consignment and stuff, and like
Cool.
did little markets and things like that. But anyway, I thought, I can't be the only one. There must be some other people doing this kind of stuff. So let's do a shop.
Yeah.
I was like 18 at the time, I think,
Yeah.
19, 20, yeah. So, hunted out like a bunch of creatives from around the country, actually. Little brands. Some people were doing shirting made in New Zealand, like funky button-up shirts. Some people were doing embroidered sweatshirts, or like, remember when like 5-panel hats were like super in, probably mainly down to like Lower and I Love Ugly and stuff. Yeah, so I found a couple of like small hat brands that were doing like funky hats with like different fabrics and stuff.
Sweet.
So I had a couple of cool brands like that. And mainly like young university students and stuff as a side hustle or whatever. And I was like, I'm putting together this collective, which has now become quite a trendy word to use. Putting together this collective of little brands from around New Zealand and opening a shop and going to do an online shop. And
cool.
Do you want to be in? And everyone was
like, let's do
keen.
it.
Yeah. So took out a lease in Takapuna, did a pop-up shop, and after like a year, it just like wasn't really financially viable. The rent was way too high. The foot traffic was definitely not like how it is now.
Not enough. Oh, okay.
Like Takapuna has developed a lot since like in the years that followed. And so shut it down. But learnt a lot and made some really cool connections.
Cool. And then what, you bounced to London from there, or how does this go about?
Oh man, from there, I had a really close friend I'd known for a long time through like way back in the Amazon days, and he had a little brand that I stocked. And his partner is the founder and designer for Federation Clothing.
Oh, yep.
So he obviously knew what was happening with my store, and I said like, I'm closing down and I need a job. And he like helped me out and connected me with Jenny and the Federation guys, and I worked for them for a couple of years, which was awesome. And did a whole bunch of awesome stuff with them, and then it was after that like kind of felt like my time with them was naturally coming to a close, and me and my partner wanted to go traveling anyway, so that's when we were like, let's go to London.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
Long story.
No. This is great. So you make it to London. You settle in with your parents for a bit. You find your feet. Then you're in the Levi's section. You're learning a lot more about denim. You're appreciating all of that, and you've had your time. What did you learn in those 2 years when you were in London that you think you've taken back home to Christchurch now? What do you think? And would you do it again? Would you go over there and do another 2 years, or were you like, hey, I've done my dash?
There were times I felt that I'd done my dash, and then like when we got back to New Zealand, we definitely wanted to go back straight away. Yeah. Obviously, there's pros and cons anywhere, but it's the reason that I love it is because it's just a hub. It's just like a hive of culture, of anything that you're interested in, and there's always stuff happening. And there's so many like awesome people, and in terms of like fashion and all of that, like it's
off the
like
charts. It's
one
pretty
of the top, in the world. What did I learn? I learned a lot about like even more about retail and customer service, and I also so I did a year at Levi's, and then I did a year at an independent boutique based in Greenwich called Meet Bernard, and I learned a ton from them around how wholesale works, how ordering works, how buying works
Yep.
in terms of meeting brands and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, and budgets,
Yep.
and also social media, because I help
Cool.
them with that a lot.
Ooh, nice. But was that because they were like, hey, we need, were they just like, oh, hey, Dom, this is how much we should order? Or were they like, hey, Dom, how many should we order? Or like, did they involve you in the process? Or were you more like on their shoulder, just kind of absorbing as much as you could and just kind of listening to them? And like, how did that work?
They involved me in the process. Like, it's a small independent store.
Cool.
Like, I think like I've got a really good eye for curating and for styling, and I think they picked that up quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was incremental in terms of how much kind of involvement in that side of things I had, but it's something that I really was passionate about. And when I like interviewed for the role, I said, like, you know, I want to kind of grow in these areas and learn this side of things, because it was kind of the one area that I didn't have too much familiarity with. So
Cool.
It ended up being like, there was a couple of smaller brands that I was responsible for. They like gave me a little budget, and I went to the appointment and I picked out what I liked, and I took photos of it all and sort of brought it back, and then I worked on the order sheet and put the quantities and the sizes in, and then showed them, and then they were like, cool, yeah, approve. And then there was a couple of smaller brands that I did that for, and then the larger brands we worked together. So
so really learning on the dime, learning on the job, and cool.
And it was awesome, like getting to go to the Paul Smith showroom, and like, which is just another level, and you know, like some of these iconic kind of brands and people. And
so you go in there, this is for people who are probably maybe tuning in and you're like, I don't really even know how this works. So you go to a showroom, they've got the latest collection of whatever, some shoes or shirts or whatever it is, and you just look through everything, and you're like, right, note it all down of what you think's like hot and trendy and all that jazz, and then you flick them an email and be like, hey, we want to order this many, or do they say there's a minimum of this, or how does that work?
I mean, generally how it slightly differs for some brands from brand to brand, but so you'll go to a showroom, and sometimes you go direct to brand, and sometimes you work with an agency.
Okay.
So there'll be a singular, you know, person who has a portfolio of, you know, 5 brands along a similar theme.
Yep.
And so you might, you know, only want 2 of their 5 brands, or you might want 1, or you might want 5.
Yep.
But you go to the showroom, you view the whole collection, and the collection is usually for 6 to 8 months ahead of time. Okay. Sometimes longer. Wow. Like Levi's deals 12 to 24 months in advance, which is crazy. But so you go and you see the whole collection, which in Paul Smith as an example is huge. Yep. It's massive. Wow. And the kind of whoever's in charge of the account or dealing with you will sort of talk you through it and say, like, this is a certain theme, or this is a color palette we're working with, or a certain trend that we're going for. Look through the whole thing, and then you would usually pick out what you like. So they'll have like a rail set up for you, and you go through and you pick out what you like, and you build a little story, and then it can go either way. You can sort of like work with them. They'll have their computer and they'll pull it up and they'll plug it in, and they'll go, okay, what sizes do you want in this? And what sizes do you want in this and this and this? And they'll build it all for you. Then they'll send it back to you for you to review. And then you can kind of go back to them and say, actually, I'm going to take this piece out, or I'm going to reduce or increase quantities.
Cool.
Yeah. That's generally how it works. Or you just take photos of it, and then they'll send you the order form, and then you you fill it out yourself. So
so out of this big collection that lots of people, obviously not just you, gets to go through and do all of that, will every item that they have in that collection, will that see the light of day, or will some of the items just, no one even picked this, let's just bury this thing. Like, does that happen?
Yeah, all the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Yeah. So if not, generally speaking, if a brand doesn't get enough orders on a piece, they'll cancel it.
Yeah.
If they love it enough and they've got their own stores, etc., maybe they'll back it and they'll produce it for themselves exclusively. But generally, yeah. And sometimes you'll order a piece and you'll love it.
Yeah.
But no one else will order it, and then you don't get it. Yeah.
Okay. Strange.
And that's probably why they produce collections, because they know, if they produce a 100-piece collection, they know only 60 will make production or whatever.
Yeah. Interesting.
But yeah.
It must be hard for you for them to be producing things that they probably love, and they're like, damn it, we never get to make this thing because like it didn't get picked up. Okay, so you go through that, you've learned a bunch, then you finish your 2 years in London, and you're like, right, I'm heading home, and you're like, I'm going to head to Auckland, or no, I'm thinking about going to Christchurch. Why on earth are you here?
My partner's from Christchurch.
Cool. Did she say, is this saying like she put her foot down?
No.
She said, hey, it's got to be Christchurch, or is it?
No, not at all. I don't have any family in New Zealand anymore.
Yep.
So, whereas all of her family, majority of her family are all based here in Christchurch.
Cool.
And so we did want to, just like when we went to London and my parents were there to kind of help us in the early stages of settling in, we wanted that same again, and basically we spent all our money when we were coming back. We did a trip through Amsterdam, Germany and Japan in Tokyo, and we came back with not that much, and so we didn't really want a ton of pressure to find a flat, find a job, all that kind of stuff. So we were lucky that we could stay with her family.
Cool.
To sort of set up. And then, we didn't really have overly that many ties to Auckland anyway. Yeah. So it was like, let's just try it.
Let's just do it. So you get here, you've settled in, you look at the landscape, and you're like, what is this? Like, okay, then what was your move? You're like, hey, I need to get a job in this space, or did you get a job in a space? And so talk me through the quick journey from you land in Christchurch to now we're in the right in the heart of Christchurch, and you've got a store and we're sitting in the middle of it. Like,
it's pretty crazy.
How do you get to that?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So we get to Christchurch like end of March 2018.
Mm-hmm. That's not that long ago.
No. And we go, shit, we never should have left London.
Classic. You're like, this town is so small.
We got to the airport in Auckland and everyone was walking around in bare feet, and we were like, what's going on?
What is this?
And then, sort of took a couple of weeks, just kind of chill out and get over the jet lag. And then it's like, okay, time to maybe look at getting a job.
Yep.
So, Jess got a job relatively quickly. Like, she's got tons of experience working with kids and doing nannying and working at preschool and stuff. So she was able to kind of get a job in that field quite relatively quickly.
Cool.
And then like I was kind of like on Instagram, like, because what I'd tend to do like was when we were doing our trips through like Germany and stuff, I'd go on Instagram and I'd go through hashtags or like profiles of like cool places that I wanted to visit.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'll just do that for Christchurch, and then there'll be tons of places and I'll just like seek them out and get a job there. But there really wasn't that many places when I started looking. Yeah. And just kind of, come into town and look around and be like, H&M, nah, I don't want to work there, and things like that. And so, I actually found it really hard to get a job. I went for a few interviews, had a couple of rejections. Yeah. And then ended up working part-time at a retail job. Yep. but it was only part-time. It was like inconsistent kind of work, and I wasn't really, getting fulfilled. And it was like, totally. What do I do? What do I do here? Do I like get 2 jobs? Do I, and having come from London where it was relatively easy to get a job, and even in Auckland with my experience and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was being super fussy, to be honest. Yeah. Like, I was like, this is the kind of place I want to work. Yeah. This is the kind of job I want to do. Like, I had it sweet at my job in London that I left, that I loved. I was doing buying, I was doing all the stuff. Yeah, yeah. And it was like, I want to do all of that. That's what I want to do. I don't want to work the shop floor anymore. Yeah. Like, I'm way beyond that. Even though I love the shop floor, you know, and it's different because it's my own business now. Yeah.
But still, you had a taste
I wanted
of
that
next level.
Yeah, I wanted a mix. I wanted a varied position. I didn't want to, and so I couldn't really find that. And I went to some recruitment like places, and they're like, doesn't exist in Christchurch. It'll never happen. Got to move to Melbourne. Got to do this. Got to do that. And I'm like, man, I didn't want to move again. Obviously, I'd done a lot of moving in my life, and I was in a space where it was like I really wanted to kind of plant roots and get a established kind of, I was like, what am I going to do? And I, talked to Jess, and I was like, we might, we might have to move to Auckland, like. And she was like, just keep trying, like,
like, hey, I'm getting a job here. I'm loving good. This.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, just kind of carried on in doing the part-time thing, looking around, seeing, what else is out there, trying to think outside of the box, think about, could I work for, like, a cafe, but not, like, I don't have any cafe experience, but maybe from a brand perspective or something. Yep. But those kind of gigs are pretty few and far between, so it was like either wait for that or back to the drawing board. But anyway, I ended up having like a really good conversation with my partner's mum, and she was basically like, have you thought any more about doing your own thing? Because, it's always on my mind, and I'd always, whenever I go traveling, she came over actually one Christmas when we were in London, and we did like Budapest and things, and I'd always like go to good, like the Red Wing shop and like, fanboy out about cool shops and cool spots and take them and be the one who's like finding the cool cafes and taking, people there. And so she was like, have you ever thought about doing your own thing again? And I'm like, I've thought about it. And she's like, well, why don't you think about it like seriously? You've got days off at the moment. Why don't you kind of do some research, write down some ideas and blah, blah, blah. And kind of that kind of led me in the direction of meeting with a few people, like meeting yourself and meeting up with Clive and talking about the idea. And everyone that I talked to was like, do it. A lot of positive reinforcement around the ideas kind of thing. And then, it just got to this point where I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna go for it. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So so I did.
So I love it. So, wow, processing this here. So you've been tossing and turning, not finding, like you're in a way you're creating your dream job. So you're like, well, this is what I want, and I can't get that from the city at the moment. But like at the moment you running your own shop, you are doing all of those extra things and thinking about ordering and thinking about logistics and everything, but also you're, like you say, you are on the floor and you've got ties to it. Okay, so you're going to start doing your own thing. You're at square one. Well, how do you begin? Like, did you just think, I want to write a list of brands that I really am obsessed with, and I want to hit them up and say, hey, can I stock you? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that was a part of it. And
okay, so you hit up for Kahu, the shoe brand, like you hit up a brand, they're a brand that you have in store here, but like, well, I don't know, you hit up another random brand and say, hey, I'd like to stock your product. Are they like, no, get stuffed? You need 5 years you need to prove yourself? Like, what's it like out there?
It's easier now.
Okay.
So for most of the brands that I had initially on board, like, and I feel pretty lucky in this respect, is they just trusted on my vision. I would send an email and say, hey, introduce myself. I'm opening a store in Christchurch, New Zealand. I guess because a lot of the brands are international, maybe they don't know how small Christchurch is. Yeah. But I'm opening a store in Christchurch. These are the brands I have on board already. And this is the kind of aesthetic that we're going for. Like, I'd send them maybe like a Pinterest board of like
the look of the store. Cool.
What we were like thinking of in terms of aesthetic and things. And because I knew also that, like, you have to be in advance, you know what I mean? So I was hitting them up relatively
early on in the piece.
Early on in the game. Like, I was like, can't open a store with no brand. So it's kind of doing stuff at the same time in terms of the business plan. Yep. So I was writing a business plan because that's what you got to do. So I was like taking my ideas and doing a big brain dump and then like separating it out into headings of, like, objective of the store, a gap in the market, because I could see that, because what I was feeling in terms of not being able to find a job also was this, there's really no stores quite like, my dream store doesn't exist in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. Like, there were some stores that had some brands that I liked, but for the most part, most of the brands that I loved weren't here. And I was like, surely I'm not the only one. And this, I wasn't like, the brands that I loved, most of them weren't like obscure, like fringe stuff that no one would know. It's like Red Wing Heritage boots actually all over Instagram at the time and still are. And I was like, I can't be the only one who's like into this stuff. So my list, I was quite thinking commercially at the same time in a way of like, I'm not going to get some extremely artisanal high-end Japanese brand, even if I might love it. That's very unrealistic. So
crack up. So in a way, you're kind of like scratching your own itch of like, hey, like these are all the brands that I'm digging, and I can see people are digging it, but like it's not here, or like I can't see. It's so interesting. Cool. Okay, so you approach them. You've got your business plan underway. You're ticking away at that. Then you start to get a few emails back saying, hey, yep, sounds good. Like, and then you just say, I want to order this. Like, how did that work?
There came a point where like a few of the brands were like, we're actually showing our next collection in Melbourne or Sydney at this time, can you come over? And so I got to the point where I was like, I need to go. Like, because in terms of building relationship, that's really good too. So I ended up going to Sydney, and I had three appointments, 3 or 4.
Say you'd want to tee up more than one.
So I went to Sydney for 3 days, and I had 4 appointments. Ooh. So 2 on one day, 2 on another. And I was like, in between appointments, I'm going to go, like, I did a lot of research and I found some stores, and I was like, sick, I'm going to go and check out these stores and meet these folks. And so it was like an awesome couple of days in Sydney. And it was like, it was scary because I'd done buying appointment. Like, I was going into it not completely blind, thanks to the experience in London. Goodness. You know, I knew how they worked. I knew like kind of the, you know, behavior and how to kind of conduct yourself and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go in like completely blind, which was awesome. But at the same time, it was like, I'm doing this for my future business. Like it was pretty real at that point.
Yeah.
It was no longer conceptual, because in an email you could always be like, oh, actually this has fallen through, you know?
Yeah.
But I was meeting people. I was, you know, like,
yeah.
So
Perfect.
yeah, that was pretty crazy. And I injured my ankle like a few days before running. I went over wearing Chucks and spent like 10 hours each day walking around Sydney, and by the end of it I was wrecked.
Oof.
Like,
you would have been
it was
ruined.
so bad.
Oh my
Worst
gosh.
footwear decision.
Yeah, Chucks. I've been through a Chuck phase, and
no support
giving you
there.
the good support. Yeah, wow. Buzzy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've bounced over to Sydney. You've done a bit of a recce. You've made some connections. Then it all starts to hit home. Like, this is real. This is my jam. This is my thing. This is my baby that you've got to like make sure it works. Then we're here in this location. How did that come about? Because location is like an important part of it. You don't want to be out in the wops trying to sell stuff. So.
So like early on in the planning, because early on in the planning, I was like, it has to be a physical space, because like I'm super passionate about bricks and mortar retail, like retail experience.
Because
retail
online's
concept.
massive. Like
Online's
it's
huge. It's a beast, but like, and it's an important and vital part. But
you kind of like the feel and the touch of being able to see the products and all that.
Yeah,
okay.
There's nothing like an in-store experience, and especially for me, I was like, I'm bringing a lot of new brands to market in terms of brands that don't have a store in New Zealand.
Yep.
So people are going to want to try them on.
True.
You know, people aren't going to buy a pair of Red Wings $500, $600 online.
If never said,
They're going to want to try them on.
True.
So physical store was essential really for me. But as a new business, like, that's a huge expense, right? So it was like, I've got to try and find a place that is affordable without being like
a shitty spot. Like,
yeah,
that's the other thing.
Without being in the middle of nowhere, or without being like, you know. So
like tiny shack. Like,
Or like,
so how did you stumble upon this spot?
So in the research, kind of before we got to Christchurch, I was doing research like on Instagram and things like, when we come back, what's there? What's the spot? You know, like, what's going to be my go-to place for coffee? Like, what's going to be, you know, like a cool like bar or pub to go to, whatever. And so I actually came across Francis Nation.
Cool.
In that. And like, I'm really into like homeware and
cool
design
store.
and amazing store. And so came across Francis Nation. Jess and I went in a few times, like when we moved back, and met Tessa, who's the owner, and she'd recently moved back from London too with her partner, and set up her business, and like loved what she was doing and stuff like that. And so when I first started out, you know, formulating the business plan, the idea around Indigo Provisions, I wanted to meet with people, you know, to talk about the idea, just like I did with you, and just like I did with Clive, and I was like, Tessa's perfect person to talk to. You know, she's moved back from London. She's, you know, into this similar kind of things.
And she's doing her thing. Like,
she's doing the stuff. She's in it. She's set up. She's So we got a coffee, and I told her about it, and she was like, "Yep, it's awesome. Do it." Like, really encouraging, like, you should definitely do it. Christchurch needs it. Like, it'd be great. Like, what brands are you thinking of? And like, obviously, because she come from London, she knew some of the brands.
Totally, yeah.
And then she was like, there's a space next door to my shop.
Does he?
And I was like, what? And she kind of, we came up, and it wasn't open at that time, but she showed me obviously the door and where it is. And then she gave me the contact details for Louise, who was the leasing agent for the art centre. And I met with her, and she showed me the space, and she had a really awesome creative energy as well.
Yep.
And she kind of loved my idea, and she, she talked to me about the process of the art centre, which is very different to a lot of other spaces in terms of, like, they're a charitable trust. They're not owned by, like, a commercial entity, although they do have, like, commercial interests as part of their philosophy. But they're not like, Westfield or a contractor or a developer. And so their philosophy and approach is a lot more holistic and is a lot more involved, and they work with you, and they, it's an application process. They're not just going to take someone on that they think might not be able to kind of handle it, or and they want to know that you have a community mindset around Christchurch and things like that. And so as soon as those conversations started happening, because I was looking at one other location, and I just knew that this was the spot.
So where are we exactly? Explain. If you're listening to this podcast somewhere and you're like, wait, I can't get to YouTube. We're actually, what's the official address? Like, how would you explain this to someone?
So we are in a Category 1 heritage listed building.
Ooh, nice.
The largest collection of heritage buildings in New Zealand. There's 23 buildings that make up this complex, which is the art centre.
The art centre, it's officially,
And it was originally Christchurch Boys High School in 1870 something.
Nice.
So it's got that sort of, I guess, Gothic,
Hogwartsy kind of
vibe. Build with the tiled roof and spires and crazy windows and stuff.
Pretty cool. It's a really beautiful spot.
It's amazing building, and we're in one of 23.
Yeah. What road is it straight out there?
Worcester Boulevard.
Worcester Boulevard there, and you're cruising along that, and then you'll probably see a hot spot on the ground floor is the Rollickin' Gelato, if you're a gelato kind of fiend. Then you'll see that, you'll shoot up the stairs, and then when you get up the stairs, it's just on the left, you can't miss it. It's a nice wee spot. You've got the sun beaming in throughout the day. You can hear the tram chiming away. Probably it's been going throughout the whole podcast. Hopefully it's not annoying, but that's a nice wee spot. And typically you'll get I guess you get a lot of tourists rolling through because they're in the city. This is a beautiful part of the city. It's right near the museum, the botanical gardens, the art galleries, like right there, and cool. So they roll through, and I guess it's just like you're right in the hub of Christchurch, so it's a cool wee spot.
It's not your typical sort of spot, I admit. It's not like high street, but I like that. I like that it's a bit of a destination without being like out of the way. We do get foot traffic, and then we also get people coming with purpose specifically to see us, which is amazing.
It's cool.
Nice. So
I'm just remembering now, I need to jump on my phone at some stage and read a couple of quick questions that people have asked, but before I do that, I wanted to hear a little bit, sure, we can talk a lot more about the store, we will get to that, but I want to know who inspires you. I've been asking all my guests that, who inspires you. It could be who/what.
Who/what?
I don't know, it could be like I'm trying to think of some deep examples, but like a certain design or a certain brand could inspire you to do something cool, or it could be obviously a person. But what inspires you?
Man, I get inspiration from a lot of different sources, and I love sort of studying and researching and getting inspired and kind of fired up in like lots of different areas, like personal life, business, fashion, design. So
perfect. You're going to have some good answers,
like so many different kind of people and stuff. And I'm always like, I love stumbling across someone that I don't know of before, or a new podcast, things like that. Yeah. So lately I've been super inspired by the Round 2 guys, who I know that you know, through their YouTube videos.
Yeah, explain to people really briefly what on earth that is.
So if you don't know, Round 2 is a series of stores in America that are primarily like buy, sell, trade for vintage and like hype stuff, for lack of a better word. They've got, in each city, they've got generally 2 stores. One is like vintage, which is all their like band tees, Tommy Hilfiger, 90s kind of wrestling stuff. Like crazy like vintage Nike windbreakers and stuff like that. And then that other store will be like Supreme, Off-White, like all the kind of really higher end kind of stuff, some Japanese brands, some Stone Island. And then they also have their own merch as well, so they do a lot of collaborations.
Where do they have their own merch? Which store does that live in? Both?
Generally both, but mainly the hype side. And then in some locations, they actually have their own merch store, like a third store, just for merch. And like sometimes Sean has like, or the guys have their own like collections that they put, like, you know, because they're avid vintage heads, so they'll have shitloads of stuff at home, and they'll just like be like, oh, I need to make a clear out, so they'll just put the best of their stuff in a separate shop. Or they've started like customizing stuff as well, so they'll take stuff from their vintage store and they'll overprint Round 2 logos or graphics on top. So it'll be like a crazy wrestling shirt, but it'll say Round 2 New York or something on it. And I think that's really cool. Like, so super inspired by those guys and their story. Like just 3 dudes who just absolutely loved what they loved. They were collectors, they were sneakerheads, they were, you know, Tommy heads. They loved stuff they collected over the years, and then they came together and like, kind of need to sell some of our stuff. We've got too much stuff. And then they open the store, and then they're super passionate, and then it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And then they're doing their own shoe. Really? And they're doing like, well, Sean, he got his own Air Max silhouette.
Oh, maybe I heard that.
Like, and he's working with Adidas and Onitsuka Tiger. And I know Luke, the other guy, did like something in Sweden where he designed some stuff. And it just goes to show, like, if you're passionate enough about what you do and you believe in it, like, you can make it into a business or career. And like, I just, and they're just really honest, straight up people from what I can tell, you know? And so,
so I stumbled across them probably through our mutual friend Bob, but it's because of the YouTube content, and they just had oodles and oodles and oodles of videos, and the videos are long as well, but it's like, you can just sit there and binge watch, and it's like people coming into the store, oh, hey man, I got these shoes I want to trade, and then it's like, oh, I want to get 100, and then it's like all that stuff is entertaining.
It's just like some of the episodes are like, they've started doing I don't know how it's a mini series, but it's like 4 hours because they got multiple locations. They jump from location to location. But it's just like people queuing outside the shop. Where are you from? What are you here for? And like, for some reason, it's really cool. It's and I think it's the culture. I think it comes back to that culture thing of like, they've built a culture around what they do. And then the brands that they have also have their own cultures that they bring in. And then the people, the individuals, like the customers, I guess, or the fans, they create culture. So it's like this intersecting and like mutually profitable, I guess, thing that intertwines. Yeah.
What I've noticed about that though, it could easily go the wrong way. Where I bring in some shoes to their store, well, a customer does, and then they're obviously they're a business, they're trying to make money.
Yeah.
So they want to buy them. It's like, what is it? Cash converters, like back in the day. It's like they want to buy it for as low as possible, and then they can sell it for it and make a nice profit.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe I've missed episodes, but a lot of the time, whenever I've watched, people have been happy with what they obviously always kind of want a little bit more, but then they're like, no, all good. They respected me. They gave me a good price, and like the fans of round two are like, they're I don't know. They just seem like they're doing right by their customers and showing them love, and because the customers, they know their stuff, and then obviously the staff. Man, the staff just seems to
super
know
knowledgeable
their stuff. They'll just like look at a shoe and be like, "Oh yeah, man. Oh no, I can't do any more than this because of this reason." They know what's in stock. They know what the prices are. Like, it's interesting.
It is interesting, and like you can't sort of be sure. They obviously wouldn't film shit kicking off, but it does seem like. It's interesting, like, because they'll offer, a shoe. They'll say, "Okay, I'll give you 200 for this because we're going to sell it for 320."
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, that's a pretty low margin. Like, how are you making money on that?
Yeah.
And I don't really know the answer to the question, but Sean did an awesome 2-part podcast with Jeff Staple, the Business of Hype, which is a great podcast.
Cool.
And they kind of delve a wee bit more into that kind of stuff, like the business behind and things like that. And he kind of touches like the first few years, there was no plan. There was no accounting or accountants. And we were just it was really pretty loose, and we didn't have markups set and things like that. But now it's a lot tighter, and they've got accountants and that say, you need to, and I think it balances out. Probably some shoe, they make not much money on it, but it's a good shoe to have, or a good piece to have. But others and also the market, the resale market fluctuates so much.
True.
So it's like they might have a shoe sitting on the shelf one day and it's, $500, but then Kanye will wear it and there'll be a photo of him, and then the next day the same shoe is worth $3,000.
Yeah,
and it's it's crazy. True. So then they actually, their margins must, go all over the show.
Crazy.
That's really interesting.
Okay, so they inspire you. Is there anything else that pops to mind that?
There's a ton of stores that I follow, all over the world. There's some stores in Amsterdam and Japan, and I just kind of look to them in terms of styling and merchandising and things like that.
Cool.
Like Gary V and things like that. I get a lot from him.
Yep. Interesting. Cool.
And just his hustle and his drive and his honesty and his communication, and I think it's really cool to see. Just but reading. Books,
nice. But the type of reading that you're doing, is it some Star Trek based Galactica virtual, or is it fiction? Is it non-fiction?
I usually have two on the go.
Oh, nice.
So I'll have a serious book, a non-fiction, 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson kind of book, and then I'll have a fiction.
Cool.
Yeah, so I just finished the second book in the Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. It's
good.
Amazing.
Ooh,
yeah, you can borrow if you want, man.
Okay.
Yeah. I try to have one of each on the go.
Cool. Mate, we'll just jump really quickly to a question I just kind of half glanced at. And that was the question was talk to us about your tattoos. Well, they just said tattoos ? But yeah,
tattoos ?
You have tattoos.
Yeah.
What? Why? When? How? all of those good things. This is really when you need the video of the podcast.
Element.
You really need to tune in here. If you're not video podcasting, then maybe now would be the time to jump ship. Talk to me through your tattoo journey.
Tattoo journey. I kind of fell in love with tattoos when I was a teenager, and mainly down to music. And
what music? What kind of music were you vibing with?
Man, like
Fall Out
music.
Boy.
Yeah. Like music's like huge part of my life, and like as a teenager, even before that, was like I had a friend who's collected CDs and music, and he was my like go-to for music, and he loved Red Hot Chili Peppers and Neil Diamond and like just a huge spectrum, like Pink Floyd, huge spectrum of music. And then like as a teenager, getting into like punk and hardcore and like pop punk and all of that kind of stuff, like Fall Out Boy, Parkway Drive, like
so where do the tattoos intermingle into this?
Well,
did you see them have tattoos?
It's like music, tattoos, and clothing all kind of intertwined into one, because a lot of the bands, like I loved the style that they had in terms of like the shoes, like the bands and like trash t-shirts and flannel shirts and all of that kind of stuff. And then most of the front men would be covered in tattoos.
Have a sleeve. Or two.
And all the guys at Amazon were into the music that I was into, and they had tattoos, and so there was like a bit of that kind of wanting to be a part of that thing, like be included in the group there. And so
so what are your first tattoos around the Amazon era?
The first time I went to the UK was when I got my first tattoos, and I was 18 at the time. And then when I came back to Auckland, I got a couple more, and then I got my whole arm done when I was in the UK.
Nice. Yeah. And so you got the bug like that first time. Were you like, this is painful, why did I do this? Or were you like, oh man, that was mean, I want to go again? Like, what was it like?
Nah, I was like, that was pretty shit to start with, but it was over pretty quick. And, I really like how tattoos look. Yeah. And I want more. And so I'm just going to put up with the pain and just keep going.
But in terms of design, like, are you pad and pen planning these babies out? Or are you like, how does that work?
Nah, pretty much everyone I've kind of like given creative freedom to the tattoo artist. Like I've had a kind of sort of idea, I want a rose on my elbow. Yeah. And then they run with the design. Or I want like a gypsy lady on my shoulder, and they do the design.
But are you rose on the elbow, for example? Are they like, okay, cool. Immediately they're drawing the draft and you're like, yep, looks good. They're slapping it on and you're in?
No, usually it's planned in advance. Okay, so you go and you say like, I'm going to book in for a day, and they're like, cool, we can do 2 tattoos for a day shift. And then like you go, okay, I'm keen on like a lighthouse design on my inner arm. And
have you got that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, nice.
I've got this idea of a medieval gauntlet holding a dagger, which I have here, and then they'll run with it.
Wow, cool.
And maybe I'll have a few image like references from other tattoo artists.
And you'll be like, just blend this and do your own thing with it. Yeah.
And then when you come back to the booking, they show you what you've done, they're like, okay, I was thinking this. And generally speaking, if you've got a tattoo artist that you trust and you admire their work, anything that they kind of come back to you with, you're probably going to like. That's why you do the research and you go to someone that you admire their work. Yeah. Occasionally you tweak it a wee bit or say, oh, can you add this in or take this out, whatever. Yeah. But generally, that's how it goes.
Cool. Nice.
It's very addictive.
Nice. Oh, another question that I have probably asked you, but I saw on that list as well, was what's with the name Indigo and Provisions? Like, where did that come from? Explain that, because that's the name of the store and we probably haven't said it enough.
It's a very
hashtag
good
promo. Okay. Someone just
trying to break it into. Indigo Provisions, the name. Like indigo, for me, like indigo is obviously a color. It's like a color that's
Oh my God, I'm a color noob, but what color is indigo?
well, it's blue, but it's a very kind of organic, rich color blue that has many different tones and hues to it. And
I'm Googling indigo as we speak. Okay.
But it originates from a flower, which is processed and harvested into a dye that's used predominantly on denim and jeans. Blue jeans are not blue without indigo.
I see.
And a lot of like textiles as well.
Interesting. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Google
a lot of
images.
textiles, especially like in Japanese culture, they use a lot of indigo for kimonos and scarves and beautiful, things. And the great thing about indigo is, in my mind, is it gets better over time.
Oh.
So if you've got something that's dyed with indigo, be it a pair of jeans or a shirt or whatever, the more you use it and the things that you do in it, and if it gets, spends a lot of time in the sun or it just gets better and it just takes on different characteristics. So the whole ethos around everything that we have is the more you use it or what you do with it impacts it in a positive way. It gets better as it ages, like a leather wallet or something that's a wax canvas. It's going to get patina from you moving in it and you doing your thing,
Cool.
So that's the indigo side. And then provisions is, quite a cool sort of old school word for things that you use, useful items, like provisions for the road, like tools. So that's kind of like, because we don't also, we don't just have clothing, we have some accessory, brass bottle opener or magazine or
Cool.
So that's
a freaking cool story. Like that.
Yeah.
So how on earth you're sitting there with your business plan and it's probably like business name blank and you're like, oh, what on earth do I do here? How did you cook that up?
Yeah. I think like indigo came to me pretty naturally because I love denim and I love like shibori and Japanese indigo dyeing and things, and I did an indigo dyeing workshop when we were living in London. So indigo came pretty naturally, and then it was just kind of like researching and looking at things to kind of pair with it. And it came quite quickly. And there are a couple of stores in the States that have provisions as part of their sort of branding or name even. And so like I kind of pinched it a wee bit from them too, but I felt that it was really fitting, and it came really naturally together. And so I ran with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if you were to explain to someone in the street this, like, Indigo Provisions, the store, the vibe, the mood, how would you do that in 2 to 3 sentences?
2 to 3 sentences.
Like, how do you explain it?
Well,
I think the name, like, when you explain the name, that actually is like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense to what I see and feel when I come in here.
Yeah.
So that's like really cool. But like, for someone who's tuning in and they've just heard your whole story and how you've built this store and like, well, how do you explain it?
Yeah. So one of our sort of catch phrases, I guess, or ethos is quality goods built to last. So it's products, primarily clothing, that are made really, really well, using good materials and good production that are made to last a very long time.
Yeah, cool.
And the whole kind of the vibe is just about things that are a little bit different. Most of the brands that we have, no one else has in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So cool. It's making a point to go with brands that we think are really doing cool stuff and have a good reputation for what they do, and that is, and it is not overly saturated in the market already, but more than likely has a bit of a following already.
Cool. Yeah, fuck. I want to ask you another classic question I'm trying to ask all my guests because I'm interested. And that is, what do you do for fun? Like, what's your enjoyment? Let's say you've got an hour or two spare. What are you going to get up to? It's not bookkeeping or...
podcasts, definitely.
Okay.
Do a bit of gaming every now and then.
What?
Yeah.
What gaming are you doing?
I like sort of like open world, like not online. Like I got a PS4 from a friend, and I'll play
open world. You mean like you can just
action role play?
You can just go around wherever you want. Oh.
Yeah, like just been smashing through Borderlands 3 at the moment. Cool. Long game.
Is it?
Oh, it's a very long game, but it's very enjoyable. Like games like that where you pick a character and you know there's a pretty open story arc, and you develop them, and you hunt and find gear and shit like that. So do a bit of that every now and then. I like playing squash.
Nice.
Try and squeeze in a game of squash every week.
Nice. Why squash? Has this been a childhood thing or?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like I know I unsuccessfully played tennis a wee bit when I was a kid, but just like when I was like 16, 17, like me and my friend would just play squash.
Does it?
Like I think because him and his dad used to play.
Yeah.
And so we started playing, and I've kind of kept it up on and off, and it's fun. Yeah.
Where do you play? In Christchurch?
There's a few places.
Yeah.
There's actually a YMCA just down the road from the shop that has 2 courts. So
nice,
that's pretty convenient.
Nice.
But there's one at Bishopdale as well. So
cool.
Try and go for a swim like once or twice a week.
Beautiful. That's good for you.
Pioneer's just down the road from my house, so ideal. Bit of running. The ankle's still a wee bit janky, but
still suffering from that
Chuck scenario. Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Bit of physical, like go down to Smashy P, have a beer.
Yep.
Like Littleton Markets.
Nice.
Littleton's a good spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. And then by the time you've done a bit of reading and whatnot, you've ticked off all your free personal time. On the spot, I've just decided I really want to give this a nudge while we're here in a store. You're going to have to entertain the listeners while I wander. I'm going to grab... sounds like someone's trying to get in the door. It's freaking me out. I'm going to grab 3 items and then I'm going to bring them back. But 3, maybe 2. Start with 2. See how we go.
Yeah.
And then I just want you to give me a little bit, like a bit of a summary of that item, because what I was amazed about when I came here for the first time, I'm like, oh, these socks are cool, or oh, this thing's cool, and you'd come over and you'd be like, actually, this, and you'd have a bit of an interesting story, and it's like, I love that stuff, because it's like when I go to an art gallery, I'm like, this piece is kind of cool. Then I read the little blurb next to it. See, some people love not having the blurb. They just love appreciating it for what it is.
Yeah.
But then
and making up their own.
For some reason, I'm like, I love to know, actually, this is depicting this crazy thing that happened. And so I'd read those blurbs and all of a sudden I appreciate the art a lot more. So that's what I found with some of your stuff. So give me a second.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll get into it. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So you make sure you keep talking.
Yeah. Also, definitely, like, that's the whole thing, right? It is like everything that we have has a bit of a story behind it. And I think that creates like connection for people. Well, it certainly does for me. Like, I'm way more connected to a product or a brand if I know the story behind it, if I know like what it's made of and why it's made of a certain thing, or you know what the background from the designers. So everything that we have, like, I try and find out, you know, the story, and often the story or the fabric or the idea behind it is what motivates me to choose it. So yeah, that's another kind of part of the store, and a big part of the store, and the reason why kind of I choose certain things or I do certain things. Yeah. Cool. So
I have given him one item. Here's the second. And the third is on its way.
All right.
So just kickstart whenever you're ready.
Real variety here. Two very different.
It's quite a visual based thing. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
So the first item you've given me is a candle by a brand called Provider Store. And they are based in Surrey Hills in Sydney. And I'm pretty sure they were kind of on my radar before starting out. But when I went to Sydney that first time to have those meetings, I actually went to their little workshop and I met the owner, Tara, and she told me her story and the story behind her brand. And her little workshop studio / shop is all about Japanese homeware. So she collects Japanese products and textiles, and also she gets these cups made in Japan, which are then the vessel for her candle. So the one that you've given me, the vessel was made in Japan and then sent from Japan to her studio in Aussie, and then she gets the fragrances formulated herself, adds the soy wax into the vessel, and you've got a candle. And then an extension of the ethos is that you reuse it afterwards. So once you're done, you've got a beautiful vessel that you can use for a teacup, coffee cup.
Wow.
Planter.
I'm so tempted to get one of these now.
Yeah.
I love fooling this as a cup is freaking stunning.
Yeah, and as a cup, it's got texture, it's got like grooves on it.
Wow.
But
also as a candle, I'm currently holding the scent that I'm looking at is earthy fig, oak, and caramel, and I can vouch for it. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
I would love to have this in the office, so I'm tempted to walk away with this at the end of the podcast. Cool. Okay. Interesting.
So
pretty buzzy story, and
Good
I'll
story.
just put this one over here for me later. The next item, I really mixed it up here, team.
Yeah.
So I threw a candle at him. The next one is a pair of women's underwear. And go for it.
So, women's underwear, and the brand is called Nisa, and it's from Wellington. So we try and get local brands when we can, and the story behind this brand is awesome. Like the founder, she was a lawyer. She was like going for her law degree and doing the lawyer thing, and then she just kind of got sick of the corporate world, and she really wanted to do something to help people and to give back to the community. So she started Nisa, which is an ethical underwear company based in Wellington. She employs women from refugee backgrounds. She gives them a job, obviously, and they're all the seamstress, so they sew all the garments there in Wellington. It's all organic cotton. And they do a lot of outreach programs and stuff like that. And so, by purchasing a Nisa product, not only is it an amazing product, like really,
they look so comfortable,
comfy from what I've heard.
Yeah.
But they do men's now as well, so I need to get some of those in.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're supporting that mission and that work.
Cool.
So, and I just kind of came across them. They weren't on my original list. I came across them on Instagram, love what they were doing, reached out, love what you're doing. This is my store. This is my website. So, and that's how it kind of works now, is I can actually show them a new prospective brand, the store through photos, the website, the Instagram, and then they can go, yep or nah.
Cool.
And so, they were like, yep. And we're the only store outside of their Wellington showroom that sell them.
Epic. Love it. They just look... There's a bra floating over there, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And they look comfortable as hell. Moving right along. The final item here, we have gone for 3 because I just want to tick a few off.
Yeah.
What have you got in your hands?
So this is Red Wing mock toe boot. And it's one of my personal favorite brands. I became obsessed with this brand when living in the UK because they had their own store, and it was super cool, and everyone that worked there was like really nice and friendly, and so it's quite a unique sort of design with this sort of like moccasin style. 1905 the brand was established, so they've been around for over 100 years. They are still made in Red Wing, Minnesota, and they own the herd, the tannery, and the boot making facility. So it's like they've got the whole production.
Wow.
Like they don't import their leathers and chrome dye them and then get another company to do that, and then like they do everything.
Wow.
And this style in particular, they originally made it with a dark colored sole, and it was kind of like popular among sort of farming industries. And one day they received a letter from one of the wives of a farmer who had the boots, and they requested that they change the color of the sole to white so that the wife could know when the husband was traipsing mud into the house, because with a dark colored sole she couldn't tell, and he wouldn't take his boots off and then there'd be mud in the house. And so they changed the color so that you could see if the sole was dirty with mud or not. Don't know if that's true, but it's a bit of Red Wing folklore.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, really old style, like super well made, like triple stitched on the seams, full grain leather, and they just like, it's again part of the whole ethos around the more you use it, the more you wear it, the better it gets, the more comfortable it gets. The color changes and softens and gets its own kind of hues and things. So.
Yeah, and the more you research you do about like Red Wings, the more you're like, oh, okay, so just try it and test it. It's been around forever, and like you say, people like pride themselves on their old pairs that they've had for so long, and they just go and go and go. So
we have a customer who bought a pair off of us, and the reason she bought them off of us was because when she was a small child, her dad had a pair of this exact one, and she remembered he had them all throughout her childhood, all throughout her teenage years, early 20s. Like he'd have them, and they just would go and go and go. And so she wanted to invest in a product that she would have for a very, very, very long time. Pretty cool. She sent me a photo of her as like a toddler treading in his boots. So it's this really small person in these massive boots. Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's cool. Good story, good memory.
Oh, so cool. Love it. So we had a look at a candle, pair of underwear, and a boot, and all interesting stories. And how did the Red Wing connection to Indigo Provisions come about? So did you just reach out and they're like, yep, awesome, well, you can stock our stuff? And is that how it played out? Or what?
That one, I knew that was on the list from day one, because it's one of the more well-known brands that we have. Also, no one else stocks them, and I know from traveling through Europe and Japan, like they're hugely popular. So I figured like it was one of the ones that people would probably know and be stoked. Oh, you guys are doing Red Wing, and they'd take notice of that. So I tried to get in touch with them. Like I contacted them through their website, their US website. I emailed, I DM'd on Instagram, and I just didn't get anything back. And then eventually I managed to find a contact for a distribution company in Australia, and I got in touch with them, and they came back to me and said they couldn't supply me because Red Wing have licenses per country. So they, if you're a Red Wing dealer in Australia, you can only sell within Australia. Same with, because I knew the guy in the UK as well, and I sent him an email, and like he tried to connect me, but couldn't. So, so in the end, I ended up speaking with a company based in New Zealand because I was looking at a brand called Filson, which do like really rugged wax canvas bags. And so I was talking to them and about the bags and about Filson, and then they said to me, "Oh, we do this other brand that you might be interested in. Have you heard of Red Wing?" And I was like, "Yes." Do you do Red Wing? And they were like, "Yeah, we mainly sell the work line, which is like steel capped kind of for proper work boots, but we have Heritage as a license, like we can get it. It's just we don't really sell it that often." And I was like, well,
let's go.
Let's get it. So
perfect.
Yeah, so it was really cool. Worked out. Yeah.
So, thanks for your time, mate. We should probably wrap up.
Wrapping up.
Are there any parting words before we throw out your Instagram handle and all that good stuff? Anything else you want to get off your chest? This is your chance. Here on the podcast. Anything else you want to say before you wrap up?
Nah, I'm just stoked, man. I'm stoked to be on this podcast, and you know we ticked over a year last November, so we're over a year now, and things have been going really well, and we've been seeing a lot of love and support for what I'm doing and the brands and the curation and the merchandise and all the things that I love and am passionate about, and was like, man, I hope people get it. And I mean, some days I'm like, no one gets it, but people are getting it, and people are finding us, and it's super, like, obviously rewarding for me. This is my passion. This is, my dream, and I get to do it, and that's freaking awesome. So I'm just like really excited for conversations like this and where that might lead, and just kind of growing the business and doing more with it. Like Josh and I have been talking a lot about doing creative stuff, hand painted t-shirts, and like, using his talents to kind of delve into other areas, and make it build that culture thing that I touched on before, which is like the main thing really for me, is to, have that round two thing of people in the store and, really vibing, and, having a queue outside maybe would be nice. I don't know, but that thing that we touched on culture, I think that's like huge for me. So I think this podcast, having an opportunity to do this and do the videos with you that we've been doing, helps big time to kind of do that. So thank you for having me.
Mate, I'm loving the chats. It was awesome to hear a little bit more about. Sure, we've caught up over a few beers, but it was cool just to hear your story. Loving what you're doing, loving the effort you're putting in, bringing some cool vibes into the central city. Keep up the mahi. You did mention, and for those tuning in, we are collaborating. We're working together on a bit of a video series, so keep your eyes peeled on Indigo Provisions socials, at Indigo and Provisions.
That's the one.
Facebook, Instagram are the primary ones. Your website is what exactly? Is it? Are you a .co.nz person?
We're a .com, indigoandprovisions.com.
Global.
Worldwide.
I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. No, thanks for your time, Dom.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Take care. Oh, I can smell that candle. It smells so good. I'm loving it. All right, cheers, bro.